Welcome to the Josh Hall Web Design Show. Helping you build better websites and create a web design business that gives you freedom and a lifestyle you love.
Hello, friends. Welcome in to episode 143. I am pumped about this episode. There's something about people who are early on in the journey, particularly when they're on fire and they're crushing it. But there's also a special energy to somebody who is new in their journey and is learning at such a fast pace and is experimenting with their business and doing all sorts of cool things. In this episode, I'm so pumped to bring in one of my recent students, Kristin Pearson, who just recently went full-time in her web design business, but is killing it and is doing such a great inspirational job on how she transitioned to go to full-time and what she's doing in her business. I think it's going to be super impactful for you. I think it's going to inspire you. My hope is that it encourages you, particularly those of you who are working as a side hustle right now with web design and you want to go full-time, but maybe you're just, you're looking at what that's going to take. You want to hear some more case studies on how to practically do it. This is going to be your episode. Kristin really gets into the weeds on a lot of the hot topics when it comes to going full-time, like risk management and your services, a pipeline of clients, preparing financially, all of these things that can be very daunting when it comes to going full-time. Kristin and I really dive into, and she's just a shining example of how to do it right. So I can't wait to hear how this episode helps you out. I want to feature and just bring up something that we do talk about fairly early on in the conversation, but Kristin had a very unique approach to getting clients, which is usually the main question everyone asks when you want to go full-time. How do I get clients? How do I get a constant pipeline of clients? Well, Kristin did something genius, and I'm not going to give it all away right now, but let me just give you a snapshot. She did a little bit of market research, and she interviewed somebody she knew in her network and asked them some really great questions and recorded the call. That call became basically her framework for building out her website, organizing her services. It provided her with content. It really nailed down the perfect avatar of like her target audience. And she was able to build her website, build her business, and start to fast track her journey, all based off of that one call. Genius, an absolutely genius way to go about getting clients. And Kristin, actually for those of you listening to this episode, put her questions together for you to download. It's a market research question for designers. If you want to do something similar to what Kristin did and reach out to somebody who is an ideal client, she has all of her questions available for you. You can go to kristinpearson.com/Josh Hall and you can get access to that document. Again, it's basically her market research questions for web designers. It should be a great resource for you if you're going to be interested in doing what Kristin did to help fast track her journey. So check that out. Can't recommend that enough. kristinpearson.com/Josh Hall to pick that up. And I'm really, really excited to hear how Kristin's experience early on in her journey is going to help inspire and pump you up to do the same with going full time with your web design business. And that's what I'm here for as well, guys. I wanted to mention before we dive in, my whole goal with what I do every day is to help you go full time and take your web design business to the next level. And actually, I would love to help you do that right now, particularly for those of you who are just extremely daunted with the business side of everything and you need help with contracts, proposals, questionnaires, content collection, all that stuff. I created my web design business course for those of you who need some help with getting your business started, growing it, and taking it to the next level. Join that today. It will fill in all the gaps, and I pull the entire curtain back on my entire business to help you take your business full-time, just like Kristin did recently. So join that today, joshhall.co/business. If you go there, that'll zip you to the course. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I really want to guide you to taking your business full-time, just like Kristin did. And without further ado, we're going to have some fun in this one. You're going to hear so much gold advice and valuable information that's going to help you take your business from side hustle to full-time as well. Enjoy. Kristin, welcome on to the podcast. It's so great to have you. Thanks for taking some time today to chat with us.
Absolutely. Good to be here. I'm excited.
It was pretty cool because you are a student of mine, and we were joking about before we went live, I was kind of curious about your journey because you went full time more recently with your web design business. And I just was curious. I was going to ask you some questions, and I thought, you know what? Let's make it a podcast episode. I sent you a welcome video, as I always do with new students, and you hit me back with a video, which I absolutely love. So just quick plug. If anyone gets a welcome video from me, if you would like to send me one back, I watch them all. I love getting those because it's awesome to get to know students and stuff. So I loved your video. I was like, we got to bring you on because I'm so curious about your experience and what you're up to. So I'm really excited to talk about full time and the mindset and a lot of the ins and outs of going for it. So needless to say, really excited to chat with you. Before we dive in here, Kristin, do you want to let everybody know where you're based out of? And then what do you do with your web design business now that's full time?
Yeah. So I am originally from a small town in Illinois, but about a little less than 8 years ago, I moved to the greater Milwaukee, Wisconsin area and just bought a house in the last few months. So I'm here to stay.
Congrats. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that area. I've got some colleagues there. Everyone's really cool that I know in that area. So.
Yeah, Milwaukee is fantastic. I like to say, and I think anybody from Illinois might shun me for this, but I like to say it's all the good parts of Chicago, just a little bit north. It's smaller and all of that. So I truly enjoy it. I think it's one of those big, small towns.
Yeah.
Big towns.
Probably some Canadian, a lot of Canadian folks there, right? I mean, it's not too far from the border. And I think isn't it like Wisconsin and a bunch of the states up north there? I mean, I feel like when I talk to people from there, they sound Canadian.
That's I was going to say. It's hard to figure out where people are from because a lot of Minnesotans as well do the O's.
Yes.
And they like the ope and all of that. So it's a big old melting pot of things, but I've yet to meet any Canadians around here.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Well, very, very cool. Tell us about your business and what you do now, because you have a personal branded website. If you could just give us your minute elevator pitch that you would say in a networking group when somebody asks you, what you do, what do you tell them?
Yeah. So I make, effective websites specifically for public speakers and coaches. And I do that in a way that keeps them in the loop and values communication and makes sure that they are represented in their branding and in their website.
Gotcha. So for speakers, coaches, consultants, I imagine. Before we talk about even going full time and everything with this, what made you decide on this niche or niche? Was there? Have we decided if we're doing niche or niche? I would not trust my pronunciation. I say niche, but I think that's fairly American. If you get like when I have Brits on the podcast, it's niche, or an Australian, it's all niche. So niche. I tend to just go back and forth depending on the room I'm in. So maybe we can come up with a happy medium between the two.
I'm no authority, so who knows what I'll say as I'm going through this. But I chose to really work with professional speakers and coaches because I find that a lot of the values kind of align with what I do. And when I was starting out, there's always the whole, do I niche down or do I, try to make websites for everybody? And I'll say my first 3 websites were a forklift repair company, and then 2 coaches. And I found that by the second coach, I was already getting more rhythm and realizing what the problems were going to be and what questions they were going to have. And then the forklift one was just such a left field. I knew nothing about that. So it was a lot more work on my end and just to try to make that connection because that's super important to me. And I had worked with a lot of coaches and professional speakers in my full-time job when we would host a lot of events throughout the year, and I would be hosting them in person, and I got to know a lot of them, and they just ended up being my favorite people of all that I've ever met. So I just wanted to work with them more.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a great intentional approach about being really self-aware about kind of who you jive with. And even like if you came from a professional background, I imagine the coaches and consultants probably were a little more savvy with tech and maybe perhaps got content to you quicker in a better way, or maybe understood a little more about, I mean, maybe not, I know the problem with coaches, consultants, and any business owners is they're busy too. And often sometimes the people who you would think would be the best at that are actually like the worst at that. And then you got, Joe and his forklift company that he's got a bunch of pictures he sends you right after your meeting. So maybe not, but it does sound like overall that's a really interesting point that you just kind of discovered pretty early on, that I like this crew, that like this tribe.
Yeah, I liked that most coaches and speakers have their content somewhat prepared. And that's kind of why I went into the professional speaking realm, is because everyone that I knew, they have a speech. They've said it a million times. They know what they're going to talk about. It's so much easier to get content from them than it is even from a coach, because a coach, I find, is very reactive to, who they're talking to and really work off of that. But a speaker is a one-to-many person, so they have to know what they're doing. So they've been a treat to work with when it comes to content.
Interesting. That's a really, really interesting differentiation between speakers and coaches. And I imagine consultants may be even a completely different thing between those two. I didn't really think about that, but wow, my mind's racing because I just think about what I do now, Kristin, and it's like it's kind of both. I guess I'm a speaker in some ways, although I've never spoken on stage other than like some meetups and stuff. But I do, speak and share my knowledge in courses and podcasts and videos and master classes and stuff. And that's a whole different ballgame than coaching and looking at a problem. And like when I do my weekly Q&A, I have a web design club and I do weekly Q&As in there. When I teach on something, the mental strain isn't that bad. But when somebody asks me a question and presents a challenge that I have to think through and really dig deep on what I know and maybe what I don't know and what we need to find out, it's a little more exhausting. Like coaching and problem solving is a whole different ballgame than sharing what you already know. So that's really, really interesting. But do you kind of funnel them out with different services? I was going to talk about this later, but it's a good time to ask this question. Or like, is the process the same for speakers versus coaches? What does that look like with actually like what you do and how you help them?
Yeah, my process is generally the same throughout both. I'm every single day, I feel like I'm trying to move my business forward a little bit. And so I've started to realize that some of maybe the questions that I ask coaches aren't questions that I would ask a speaker. And so I'm starting to do a little bit of differentiation. Like to collect content, I just have a Google Doc that has a lot of pointed questions, and I'll take that content and put it into their website where it makes the most sense. And since I've been working with speakers, it's not as easy to just say like, what's this program? Instead of like, who are you trying to help? The questions are just a little bit different. And so right now I'm working on a huge workbook that's going to be for speakers only. And it's just I feel like it's going to appeal to them a lot more because the questions are, when you go on stage, how does this feel type of thing.
And do a lot of the speakers have books and digital products like courses versus coaches? I would imagine maybe they have courses like myself, but I would imagine that's probably more of like they want to get their calendar booked, right? Like they want to get calls and they want to get some sort of coaching program sold. Is that kind of what you see between those two?
Yeah, I'm finding that a lot of the coaches do have those courses kind of go that route more. And then the speakers do have more productized things like a book because it takes so much to be a speaker when the world is normal. They're traveling so much and doing all of that. They don't have time to then do a lot of coaching calls. I've worked with speakers and I have one right now that he does coaching and he's writing a book. So a lot of them, it's muddied water. So that's why it's good that I'm working with both of them because I do kind of get a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Wow. That makes a lot of sense. I just did not even think we were going to dive into this right from the beginning, but I'm just like, you're really making me think about what I do on a day-to-day basis because I've just now realized I'm like 75% speaker, maybe 25% coach, maybe a little more coach, but I try to balance both. I think as much as I love coaching and problem solving and, seeing somebody like yourself, like getting to know you and your journey, I also hate having a full calendar of calls that wears me out. So I'm kind of liking both. So really, really interesting. So we'll come back to this because I am really curious about how you even got to the point of, meeting these consultants or these coaches and speakers. But let's back up before you started your website here, Kristin. What were you doing in your former life before you became a web designer and what you're doing now? What were you doing? And then maybe that'll segue into how web design became a part of your life.
Yeah. So web design became a part of my life, honestly, back in MySpace days. That's how I learned that that's what I like to do. And which is really embarrassing and like really tells you, like when I grew up.
I'm finding a lot of web designers started with MySpace because
that makes me feel good.
That was the first taste that a lot of people got of HTML because MySpace allowed you to customize your site. And then a lot of people were like, especially I was in the band world, this was huge for bands. I mean, we paid a guy $800 back then just to like build our MySpace page. I remember I thought that was like, holy cow, $800. So I think that's actually a really crucial starting point for a lot of web designers. So not alone.
Yeah, that's very validating then because I loved doing that. And so whenever I started thinking about where I wanted to go to college and what I wanted to do, I was like, why don't I just do this thing that I find that I'm good at, just playing with the HTML, doing the layouts, all of that. And I went to college for graphic communications. Web media was the official term of it. And it was 2 years of that really fun stuff that I liked to do, the designing, the creative. And then the last 2 years ended up being more of the programming, or not even that, but like server side of things. And it was just I couldn't grasp it. I don't know how I passed anything. It was just not in my brain that it worked that way. And I kind of got away from the web design thing. It ruined my love for all of it. And when I graduated, I was like, oh, I want to be just a graphic designer. I want to get just the creative side of it. And my dream was to be the graphic designer for the Chicago Blackhawks. It was just like, that's my thing. And I got an internship in the sporting world for NASCAR for just graphic design. And I realized very quickly that I did not want to work in sports. Some people love it, but for me, that's an entertainment thing and a way to get away from any kind of stress. And I wouldn't want to watch a sport and feel like I'm working. So
that's so funny, Kristin. I'm right with you because when I got into graphic design, I wanted to do design for the Blue Jackets because I'm in Columbus and I'm a big hockey guy. So that's so funny. I used to go to the arena and being like, man, I would love to design these banners and stuff and these Facebook graphics. But then similarly, as I got further into the graphic design world, I think, oh my gosh, I bet those teams are so stressed out trying to meet deadlines and have, the corporate ladder they got to, run everything past. So I'm sure it's a little bit different on the inside.
Yeah, it was very, very corporate and I wasn't expecting that environment. So I did that. And then I was like, okay, well, now what? I've graduated. I got this degree that I don't really love. And I was so to fill that void, I guess, of passion during college, I was in an organization called Pi Sigma Epsilon. And it's a co-ed business fraternity. So it's a professional organization that teaches you sales and marketing skills. And I loved every second of it. I dove in. I wanted to do everything with it. So I got on like the executive board. So I got my leadership, kind of experience. I got to travel across the country for competitions and events. And I loved it so much. Well, after I completed my internship with NASCAR and I was like, well, I don't know where I'm going and what I'm going to do. I went to an event as an alumni. And they were actually hiring for someone that did graphic design, new web design, and would like to travel and be a consultant to college students, throughout the country. And I was like, if I could dream of a perfect job, I don't even think I would have gotten to that cool of a job for me. Wow. And it was perfect. And I was there for 7.5 years. And that's the only job I technically had full-time since I graduated. So with that, it's a small team, it's a nonprofit, and you start getting that lot of hats and a lot of responsibilities and of things that you didn't know that you'd be good at, or if you even know what to do. And I loved it. It was everything I wanted because it was kind of feeding that entrepreneurial spirit that I had, that I wanted to have my hands in everything. And I just didn't know what that was until I got into that position and people started telling me like, this is because you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, I didn't know that. Like, I did not get that into my head until people started telling me. And just throughout the years, more and more came onto my plate, and I started managing people, and I still had to travel, which started to get kind of not my favorite thing, but it's very rewarding of a job. But then, all of a sudden I'm looking around and I'm doing sales and I'm starting chapters, I'm traveling, I'm doing all these things, and I'm not doing the graphic or web design. We were hiring other people. We were hiring consultants or outside freelancers to do that work for us because my plate was just too full. And then I found out what they were making, and I was kind of floored.
Here's the question I had with all this. As your responsibility grows, you're taking on more hats, you're taking on more, different roles and everything. Is your income matching all of these extra roles you're taking, or were you capped and limited with what you were offered in that position?
I think capped is a too harsh of a word, but limited is perfect because it is a nonprofit. And then, we're just trying to help. You're trying to serve. The job is to serve. And it's so worthwhile in all the other ways, but the income part of it.
Yeah.
So
that really interesting. I think this is really common when people unknowingly realize they're entrepreneurs. This, again, same for me. I feel like I share a kinship with you on this stuff, Kristin, because very, very similar. I didn't realize I was an entrepreneur either. Even farther into my web design business, I just thought I was going to be a graphic designer or a web designer for an agency, and then thought I might be a small team business owner. And then I realized, I actually like doing a lot of different things, not just one thing. And I don't like following a checklist. I love making checklists, but I hate following them, which is a natural sign of an entrepreneur. So I think that's a really, really good point, to intentionally be self-aware and just look at what you enjoy doing, because it's very clear you enjoyed the marketing and communication and sales and people to people aspect. Myself, the programming side. You probably didn't love getting into PHP, my admin, and looking at database tables. That I understand. I get it. So that's really, really interesting, because I'm sure that was a turning point for you. So you get this, taste of entrepreneurship. Did you think about, or did you try going into more marketing or just graphic design areas, or how did web design itself kind of enter in for you?
Yeah. So when I got hired to do that, it was, you needed to have experience. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I have it. It's not going to be my full job. I can do it. I know I can do it. And it was through that is when I learned more about WordPress and the different builders of ways that make your life easier. And I was like, this is more of what I enjoy. And this is kind of how I would like it to be. So the organization already had that set up. And so when I just jumped in on the team, I was like, oh, yeah, I can do this. This is easy. This is the fun part. This is bringing me back to why I loved it. And so it kind of just grew that from there. But then, I loved doing it. I had so much fun. And then, the window of being able to do that started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we hired out people. And like I said, it was kind of but I really liked doing that, but I was getting pushed kind of more into the maybe future CEO role. So they were, my CEO at the time, and some of the volunteers were all like, you need to learn the other things. And I'm like, but I don't like the other things. They don't come easy to me. It doesn't matter if I'm good at something, it doesn't come easy. Those are two different things. And so it really kind of took me on a different journey. And I was like, I want to get back to what I love and back to the basics and why I've made all of the choices that I've made in my life. So that's how I was like, I can do this web design once I learned WordPress, and I use Elementor. So once I learned that, I was like, oh, I can do this for people that need it and provide that. And it's fun.
Well, this is another big point too, because I think the tech side of things deter a lot of people from going into web design full time. It really scared me because I am not a numbers guy, and I tend to struggle with code, even though I love CSS. I have a course on it. It took me a while to learn it, and interestingly enough, I recently had one of my students on who is bilingual, and she knows another language, and she actually really enjoyed learning CSS. I kind of wonder if there's something in that, where if you learn different languages, maybe you pick up on different coding languages as well. I don't know. But either way, I think some people are really interested in code and can understand it. And maybe people like ourselves, it's a little harder to grasp, or because we just don't love it. But I say all that to say that is a big deterrent. The good news is, when it comes to code with builders like Elementor or Divi, like I use, you don't really need to know I mean, technically you don't need to know anything, but I think it's good to know the basics of it. And it's not rocket science. Like once you just have a grasp of the basics, it's actually incredibly easy to use and navigate. And once you do it a few times, it becomes natural. And then the other stuff like cPanel and email and databases, all that, same thing. It's good to know the basics of that. But then once you know the basics, hire the rest of that out, or don't partner up with somebody, or you can, there's oodles of options to get that off your plate. So I imagine, like, did you think about that when the time came to go full time? Like, did you think about how am I gonna handle the stuff I don't like along with the stuff I do like?
I think I've always been the person to get myself into problems and figure out how to get out of them before thinking about what I'm actually getting myself into. So it was, I started doing web design on the side while I still had this job. And then I would run into those problems of these things that I don't really know about. They were things I've definitely taken classes on in college, but I didn't retain any of it. And so I knew kind of what to Google. Like I knew the words that I needed to Google, and then it was just tutorials from there, taking courses, all of that. Like that's what got me to being able to confidently be like, okay, I can do every phase of starting a website and making it live.
Beautiful, beautiful. And did you have any support forums or Facebook groups or communities you were a part of at this point to help you out? Or was it just you and your trusted best friend, Google, at that point?
I was definitely in a lot of Facebook groups. I'm in a million Facebook groups, I feel like, and a few of them are very pointed at web designers or graphic designers. And those have been the most helpful thing. I mean, I was in there yesterday asking a question, and I love those communities because no one's competing with each other. There's no one, we're not performing for anybody. We're just needing help with a problem. And so everyone's super helpful. And I love that about that. And I think it's super important that if you're going to go full time, to get some kind of network that's going to help you and answer your questions. And I found that in the form of Facebook groups, especially now, because we're all sitting at home. I can't go to a WordPress meetup or anything like that still. Like, we're just here, pandemic times.
A great point. Another great point. This is something I've been harping on for a long time now, is particularly when you go full time. You literally do not have to do it alone. Surround yourself with support groups. There's free Facebook groups. I have my web design club. There's premium options for more in-depth relationships and trusted partnerships. There's free options. 100% agree with you there. The groups you were in, was that like Elementor based or just WordPress based?
Just web designer. I think you had Emma Kate on your podcast at some point, and she has a lot of stuff to do with someone named Anna Dower. And so Emma kind of runs the whole website side. And then Anna does the graphic design. And I'm in both of those. And they've just been the most helpful groups I've ever been in ever.
Yeah. They've done a really great job. I'm excited. Well, at the time of recording this, we're recording this in early September 2021. Next month will be the Designer Boss number 3 summit, which is going to be really cool.
That's how I know who you are.
Oh, okay.
It was the first one that you were on.
Okay. That's right. Because I recognized your name when you came through a course. And then that's great to know that was the first introduction. Yeah. And they've done a really good job at helping both primarily women in the graphic design and marketing world with getting into web design. But they've done a really good job at, I feel like, having a really open community for folks just like yourself. I think you're probably like their key demographic, a professional gal who didn't want to stay in that certain role and then wanted to go full-time graphic design and web design. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. That's a huge part to going full-time. So I imagine that gave you some confidence. Take us to like the moment. Take us to when you were like, okay, were you making enough on the side to feel like I could really go full-time and do this? What did that look like when you were like leading up to, and what made you finally go, let's do this. Let's take this full time.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was kind of not doing the things that I loved at my job. I wasn't getting paid what I wanted to be paid. And at the time, so as pandemic started, I was doing some side business, some side, websites, and we were in an apartment. It was my then boyfriend, now fiance, but we wanted a house, and we were like, we can't afford a house. So I'll start doing side stuff. We'll start making more money. And then, so the pandemic really opened my eyes to a lot of things. It was that I wasn't extremely happy in the position, as great of an organization that I worked for. I wasn't happy there. It wasn't serving me. I wasn't serving them anymore all that well. And then we wanted to buy this house, and we got engaged, and now we have to afford a wedding. And then the moment that it happened, and we're going to go like real kind of more personal on the side, is so in the beginning of February this year, 2 days before my 30th birthday, my dad passed away of cancer. And my dad was my biggest supporter in the business. Every time I would see him, he would be like, how's the business going? How, what's this? And he would ask me about the clients, like by their name, which is amazing because he was a career person. Like he worked for the same company for 38 years as a teenager. And then he worked for the same company until he retired. And so I would not have expected the support from him because he was always like, what's next? Like, make sure you're stable and everything. But when he passed away, it was kind of like, I had to reflect on a lot of things personally. Like I already knew I was unhappy, but I was scared to take the leap. I was making money. I had clients. I had some connections that were helping me and referring me. But when my dad died, it was, he was retired for 6 months. He worked his literal entire life at one company and didn't get to enjoy any of that. And so it was just kind of like I have to do this. And it's on paper looks like the wrong equation because I was like, oh, I'm going to buy a house. So he passed away in February. March, we bought the house. And then in May, I quit. And it was like, most people don't buy a house and then quit their jobs. But I knew the income was able to be there. And I had enough in my savings that I can sustain this for a couple months. And if not, I had already built such a network through my old job of like professionals and high level executives at, very common, well-known companies that if I needed to get another job, I had connections. I had people that have already said that they were my safety net. So it was just a combination of everything. And then it hit me one day and I was just like, I got to do this. I have it. I have to stop stalling.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Kristin, that is so powerful. Thank you for being open and transparent about that. That is a huge, huge life moment and mental shift. And first off, something, a little note before we get back to that. If somebody is going to quit their job, it is best to buy a house first to get that loan and then quit the job. Because if you had quit your job 6 months before getting a loan, they would have been like, wait a minute, you just started this business. That's not going to happen. So,
exactly. And that was, I knew that part. And I was like, well, I've just sat there at my job for a couple months and I had some responsibilities I needed to fulfill and I owed the company that. And so we had a big event in March and I was like, 2 weeks after that, I was like, well, I'm out of here. So
well, you did that right there for sure. Wow. The stuff with your dad though, like that is,
it's something.
Well, and I just like the personal aspect to all this too, aside from the emotional stuff, is like that really does a lot to mindset. I feel like when somebody is that close and then isn't there anymore, or like, I know for me, I didn't have that close of a person pass away, but I did have two people in my life that were really important to me from a professional standpoint. One was I used to be a cabinet maker, and the boss of that company, I looked up to in a lot of ways and stuff. And when I started my web design business, whenever I'd run into him, he'd be like, so how's the web design stuff going? He's like, maybe you'll do our website one day, stuff like that. And then he passed away, and it was really, really devastating. And in a weird way, I kind of felt like I always wanted some approval from him in my business. And when he passed away, in a weird way, it was almost freeing. It was like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's weird to say because I don't know. It's hard to articulate. I think
emotions are tough.
Yeah. Emotions mess with you and that kind of stuff. I think when there is somebody in some sort of mentorship role, even if it's, obviously your dad, that's a whole different ballgame. But even if somebody is a mentor or a coach or an old boss or something, they're important to you in your life. And when they're gone or whatever that looks like, it definitely messes with your mindset. But I do think it does often open up some freedom, and it does, in your case, like make you really look at the full picture and then go for it. And I was thinking about another gal in my network who was really impactful for me in my business. And when she passed away, she was quite young. That kind of made me realize too, like, man, life is short. Like I want to enjoy every day. Yeah. So some of those things, as devastating as they can be, are really big moments. So it's really interesting to hear you look at your dad's life and that's really common. Most all of our generation's parents I'll work for one company. Ain't nobody, no kids these days, we'll bring it back to the kids these days. Nobody's working for one company longer than like 6 months. So,
yeah. And it's like, this is something that people don't really talk about a lot when it comes to the starting a business and everything. It's like, you got to remember that life is happening outside of all of that. And I don't think it's really talked about a lot, because I also lost my grandpa like right after that too. And it was just like, I was just with so much, I was like, I need to change. And I can say, yeah, I was making enough money and all that. But it's like, the bigger thing was that I needed to protect myself and just kind of like do what I needed to do. And like, remember that, the life is short thing, and to just, not take calculated risks, really.
And I think it's generationally, it's different, because in our parents' generation, they didn't have the technology we have now. Right. So I don't know how many entrepreneurs there were back then. It was a whole different ball game if you were going to be a business owner in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, than it is now. And I actually, the more people I talk to, particularly from an older generation, I'm really thrilled about our time right now. Like, I know there's a lot going on in the world, as there always is. And, I think it's easy to focus on negative stuff, but if you quiet some of that out for a little bit and just think about the amazing opportunity we have to work from home, and like we're doing this call, we're a few states away from each other and we're having this call together, like that is amazing. Yeah. And we can build businesses online. We can work at home if we want. We can work in a coffee shop. We can, particularly in web design and graphic design, you can make as much income as you want. There is no cap. There's no limit. You can literally, as smart and as hard as you want to work, you can make it happen. So did all those thoughts come into play when you made that decision?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had the weight of the entire world and a million other people's worlds on my shoulders. And once I quit and I sat at this desk and I was like, okay, we're going to make this work. And the good thing about, and you kind of touched on it, is that our effort can actually be what matters to our income. And like, it's kind of directly related. And, in a 9-to-5, a salaried job, I didn't have to work that hard sometimes. Like I could just kind of skate by and, phase out and do all that. But right now it's such a blessing to know that if I only want to work 5 hours today, but I work really hard, like it's been a great day and it's going to be super productive. And it's more motivational to me and just my personality type to be like, you have to get this done. Otherwise you're not getting paid. Like, all right, then let's get it done.
It's a big mindset shift there too, isn't it? When you go full time, because you're like, wow, I don't have to work 8 hours a day if I don't want to. I can, or I can work like really hard and quite a few hours on a few days, and then have 4 days that are either off, or maybe a couple of days that are low key. That's kind of my schedule. I tend to work a lot on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Fridays are half days, and Mondays are like kind of easy days. I don't do any calls. I just do planning or writing or kind of whatever I want to work on. And there's seasons, just like any position. There are seasons that are really busy, but then there are seasons, or like particularly during the summer, I try to spend as much time with my little girls. So that is a very, very new concept in the grand scheme of any sort of modern work age. So I say all that to say it is a lot different with our generation, because our parents' generation they may be supportive, but they probably don't understand quite this realm and this world, which is really, really cool and really, really freeing. So I figured that all played into that decision to actually, put in your 2 weeks and go full time. Now at this point, 2 questions. I definitely want to know, like, did you have projects lined up? The other thing I would like to know is, what did the risk factor look like for you? Let's start there. How did you analyze the risk? Like, you said worst case scenario, you could get another job because you had a network. Was that pretty much your safety plan? And for, God forbid, it just didn't work out after a few months of going full time?
I would say so. Yeah, that was kind of my safety plan. And I knew I didn't want that. And if I don't want something, I'm going to work as hard as possible to make sure that doesn't happen. And
Beautiful.
I'm very lucky to have an amazing fiance, and he was willing to go get a side job. If he was like, if this doesn't work, he's like, you have to go for this. You've been talking about this for years. Like at this point, you need to do this for you. And he was like, I'll go get a job at, some store and I'll bring in extra income while you do this. And I did not want to put that burden on him. So that was just extra, I don't want to say pressure, but it was more motivation.
It was fuel for the fire.
It was such fuel. And I was just like, do I have to get a side job? Like, am I going to have to go and work at Starbucks or something? Like, I don't want to do that. And so with doing all of that, it kind of jumps into I knew I needed to raise my rates and start charging more, because if I thought about what I was making already at my previous job, what I needed to pay for, like my mortgage, I needed to, I had to upgrade all of my technology. I was working off of my work's computer for most of the time, but then I had just a tablet and I had all of these expenses I needed to do. And I just worked backwards of like, what I was charging was not enough.
Yeah. So, well, that's another awesome support system for you as well, to have your fiance who backed you up on that. Cause that is a biggie. You really do. You need to have the support of who's ever closest to you, particularly if it's a relationship like that, because, if they're really worried or against it, that's a whole, different set of challenges. But it seems like most people I talk to are in this position. There's a level of trust there and comfort and support that's going to help you as well. And I think equally as powerful as like worst case scenario is what you just don't want to have happen. I haven't heard anyone say it quite like that. I love that, because like in my case, going full time, and even going full time with courses now, like for whatever reason, if it dropped off, worst case for us is we would have to move in with parents. And I'm never going to end up on the streets. That's never going to happen. That I do not want that to happen. And that's far from my mind now, because we're kind of luckily, fortunately past that. But when I went full time, that did occur to me like, okay, what is the worst case scenario? We'd have to move in with parents. Yep. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that does not happen.
Right.
And if it does happen, worst case scenario, that's not that bad in the long scheme of things. So,
right. And how privileged of us to say that. And I totally I totally acknowledge that. But that's what I was going to say. If anything, I could have moved back in with my mom. There's always options, or, my friends or something could have made it work. And I think that's what's important for anybody listening. If they're like, well, I'm not engaged to a guy that's willing to do that, or, maybe my parents live too far away or something like that. It's just finding some kind of support system and finding that safety net, I think, is important. That safety net that might be too far down, like further down than you'd want it to be, but it was still there. And I'm very thankful that I never had to deal with that.
Yeah. And the risk factor with your family as well. Like for people who have kids, it's a different ballgame as well. Yeah. Interestingly enough, you did commit to a mortgage right before this happened. So it's not like you reduced your expenses and had a bunch of savings and then just went for it. It was like you added expenses and a lot more and then went for it. So there's a little more fuel to the fire too. Well, I'm not going to say pressure, because I think that all is good fuel to the fire, because it forces you to raise your rates and to I'm sure think smarter, value your time more. When you went full time, I'm fascinated by the mindset shift of a 9-to-5 person to freedom person, the 24/7. Did you still work a lot of hours? Did you have any sort of trouble like reducing hours at any point? Because I did. That was it took me years to not feel weird if I wasn't working at 3 p.m. So what did that look like?
Right away. First of all, I had a million things to do. Right. So I had this new house, which is my child at this point. And I had so many things in my personal life to do and all that. But I totally felt guilty if I wasn't sitting at this desk from 9 to 5. And I had a moment where my fiance said, let's go to the grocery store. So I'm like, I can't do that. It's 2:00. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yes, I can. I can do this. Yeah. And I don't need to work later tonight to make up for this or anything. But I think the biggest struggle I had was making the most of the time that I've been sitting at a computer because of that 9 to 5, getting paid no matter what. Here I am just sitting here and I just got to make sure I'm answering emails on time and all that. And that totally does not encapsulate everything I had to do for my career. But now I'm like, if I go quicker, it's a reward. But before at the 9 to 5, if you go quicker, you're still sitting here. You might get more responsibilities.
It really goes back to one of my favorite quotes from the book Rework from the guys from Basecamp, which is you don't need more hours, you need better hours.
Yes.
And entrepreneurship, it is a whole different ballgame than a salary position because I think is in a salary position, as long as you're at your desk and you're doing something, even if it's a low level task, you probably still get to the same endpoint. Well, newsflash for everyone who is full-time now or is going to go full-time, when it's all on you and you have complete freedom, that does not apply. So answering emails for 8 hours a day is way different than envisioning your next 3 months and planning out a new product or a new service or raising your rates. Those tasks, they're all really important, but they're not equal as far as the output that they're going to get. So I know for me, this is something I've really, really learned and I'm really preaching to all my students, particularly when it comes to scaling to 6 figures, is you have got to do a task inventory and look at what you're doing day to day and then figure out, okay, what's a high level task that only I can do? What's a low level task that I can still do, but maybe in short bursts or controlled times, or that I could automate or that I could hire out, and then focus on the $150, $200, $300 an hour tasks. Right. How long did it take for you? I mean, I know you're still early in the journey because you went full-time in May. We're talking in the beginning of September 2021.
June 1st was my first day as my own boss. And so it's September 1st now. So it's just been a couple months. And I will say I knew when I switched over to this, you have all the freedom, but you got to do a lot of the things. Mindset was I still get up early. I'm still at my desk and ready to work before 9 a.m. I've already done, here's my top 3 tasks for the day. I did carry that over, and that does really help because I noticed that there were a couple of days that I was like, maybe I'll just do laundry or I'll, watch some TV in the morning or something. And that's nothing I would ever have done whenever I was working a 9 to 5 when I was in the office. But I was like, I can't do that. I found myself not being as productive. And so, I carried that over. I think I have a good grasp on it now because my personal responsibilities are a lot less. And I say that, but also I'm starting to I want to renovate our house. And I'm like, here we go with those projects. So we'll see.
It's a fine line to balance between enjoying the freedom you have and actually not taking advantage of it in a way. It is kind of tricky. I've had to balance myself with that too. There are some weeks where if me and my family will go to the zoo or something, that's almost a full day. It's we do some stuff like that. But then if there are times where I find myself not paying enough attention to my business, or I tend to trying to catch myself, and I've been working from home for almost 12 years now. So I can pretty much quickly dial in what I need to do, or if I feel like, all right, I'm spending a little too much time outside of what I need to do. I think you'll probably learn that as well, as far as the seasons of when you can invest more time outside the business versus really going ham on it. But I think that's a great point. It's really important to look out for because the next thing you know, you could be watching, you could binge a TV show and then it's 2:00 and you're like, oh shoot, I got to do something today. So it's also, I think there's a huge level of, self-control, and you really have to be self-aware and kind of be your own boss in a lot of ways. Did you have any issues? I mean, it sounds like you're a go-getter. It probably didn't affect you too much, but did you have any points where you had to realize wow, I've got to be really self-motivated to get this stuff done when there's no deadlines unless you set them or your client set them? Right.
I would actually say that I went through that phase and learned those lessons during the pandemic and working for a 9 to 5. That's where I kind of got into that. And so the transition was a lot more smooth because I was always thinking okay, if I can do this quicker, if I can do this, I was, here's this whole to-do list I can do. What can I do that's kind of more brainless? What can I do when I'm watching TV and hanging out with people or, and just sitting on my computer? I definitely learned that earlier on whenever I first started working from home, because I was in an office every single day or I was traveling. So before this pandemic, so I learned it then.
Gotcha. So going full time, going back to my other question, what did the business landscape look like for you? Did you have a bunch of projects backed up that you were like, all right, finally I can have time to work on these? Or was it a real, jump in the deep end, hope it works out kind of thing? What did it look like, as far as your pipeline of projects and stuff?
Yeah. Going full time, I had 2 projects that I had gotten from a referral basis. They were kind of ending as I was going full time. And so when I went full time, I all of a sudden had a ton of time. And this goes back to why I chose the public speaking thing, actually, was I was like, okay, I need clients. I need to figure out how to make this happen. And I ended up actually reaching out to a mentor that I had met through my old job. And he was a professional speaker. He doesn't do it anymore, but I was like, can I just chat with you about, what a professional speaker would want in a website or marketing, all of that. And we had an hour-long conversation, but by the end of it, he's like, you should talk to one of my friends who owns a speaking agency. And I was like, that's not exactly what I was going for, but okay. I mean, at this point, business is business. And the moment I started talking to the friend, I was like, this is the actual opportunity that I needed, because I did that website. And now it's all of the speakers that work for the agency. I'm their trusted person to go to for the website. And so I had the people ending when I went full time. And I think I had a couple side graphic design gigs, which I don't love to do anymore. I really like to focus on these high value websites and everything. But I was doing some hourly work for a couple of the previous clients that I had that they just needed a new PowerPoint. And I can't look at something and it be poorly designed without being like, can I help you?
Yeah.
Right. So I had a little bit going, but it was a little bit, I didn't know where my first real paycheck from myself was coming from in the business. But like I said, I had savings, I had all that. And I'm trying to think, I was like, my mom has her own business kind of on the side too. And she hasn't paid me to do her website, but I'll talk to her about that. But I knew I had that kind of in the back.
She's pocket. Like, I raised you. You owe me a free website.
Exactly. And I do 100%. I owe that woman the world. But I was just like, I had some things that I could have done for people, but I decided that I needed to learn more about my target market, and that just paid off in dividends. So
that's awesome. Well, hats off to you for realizing that so soon. And you just hit the nail on the head on how to start getting clients. This is the number one question I get all the time. I understand, but sometimes it boggles me that the most simplest approach to getting clients is so overlooked, which is to talk to your freaking already established network. Right. Like, those are the people who already know you, and they know a lot of other people. Talk to them. So, and most business owners and professionals are super open to having a call with somebody. And I want to take this moment right here to mention to everybody and encourage you. Do just what you did, Kristin. Reach out to somebody you know in your network who is professional or who might know a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with what you did as an interesting approach, because you thought about that target market and just asked questions about them. It wasn't like you were like, hey, John, or whatever his name is, do you know any people you could send my way? You can do that too, but a more tactful approach to build trust and authority is to go that route, to be curious and ask about what they're looking for, because that's going to show a very different side of Kristin than just like, hey, I'm doing website design now. Do you know anybody? It's like, what do you think clients need? Woo, that's some powerful stuff. I'm super excited for you. Did that help you also craft your services? Because I imagine you figured out that and subsequently, are you doing more than just websites? Are you doing email marketing, social, anything like that? Is that kind of how you were able to craft your services for this target market?
Yeah. So the thing is, you mentioned oh, you're a speaker. Do you know any speaker that need websites? Like that kind of question. I had that. I had about 30 questions to ask this man. And that was the last question. And I didn't even get to that before he was like, you need to talk to this person. So awesome. That's that whole thing. But that call was truly life-changing, because I went into that call assuming so much. I thought that I could make a lead magnet that'd be perfect for speakers because of my background in some sort of marketing and sales. And I threw it out there to this guy, and I was like, here's 4 different lead magnets I thought of. which one would you like? And he basically said none of them were great. He's just like, what authority are you to tell me how to market my speaking business? And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, and it was a trusted person. So it was a conversation, all like he was there to help me clearly. And so that really put me back to the drawing board, and I recorded the call and I still have it. And basically like I used the words that he said, I put them straight to my website. I record every call I have with a potential client, because when I'm doing the proposal, I want to use their words. And I know you've talked about this. It's like sales 101. I've been told this like for the last 10 years of you need to, ask somebody what they want and then tell them that tell them that you can do what they want in the exact same words. And so, so that kind of got me into that. And then am I doing more than websites? I do maintenance, which you obviously know that because that's how, that's the course I've taken from you. I do maintenance for my clients. And then I do have some that, have me paid hourly to do like Canva templates for them because they just want some easy way to build out their social media. And so I'm willing to do that. It's not like a full term. Like I would love to eventually hire somebody to work under me that does all of that. That's kind of like the goal. Like maybe in a couple months or a year, I already know somebody that'd be great for it. So I do offer a little bit more than things, and I'll design a lead magnet if they have it. What I don't do is copywriting because I can talk, I can't write. Most of my website is written because I said, I used a Google Doc and turned on the talk to text or talk
I was just going to say, talkers just need to record everything. It. Yep.
That's how I do everything, is I have to do it that way. And like, so those are kind of my services. And so, that call did change everything for me because I was like, I thought I knew, and turned out I didn't.
Wow. I can't even tell you how valuable that is. I mean, obviously, the value of that call, that just goes to prove just reaching out to somebody and asking questions can literally be life-changing, because a few months after going full time, you could be in a way different spot, Kristin, if you hadn't had that call. Like maybe you put all your eggs in these baskets of like lead gens and reaching out to speakers. But if it doesn't convert, you're in a whole different place than just asking those pertinent questions and hearing exactly, what is most needed and what he knows and then who he knows. And that was a really interesting point that you didn't even need to ask him for referrals, because another sales trick, if you just ask questions and are really genuinely curious and want to provide solutions, you don't even have to ask for the job. You don't even have to sell. That's what's really cool about some of these different type of sales tactics, because if you do it right and you're really curious and you really care and really want to help, you don't need to sell at all. It'll just naturally come to you. So that's really cool.
Like I really have the organization that I used to work for to thank for that, because their whole mission is to help college students learn sales and marketing. And throughout that, we did annual competitions that are huge. It's what the organization is known for, that these really high level executives come in and they judge a sales competition, and these students get 12 minutes to sell something. And there's a whole training that goes with it. And I've gotten to sit on that training for years, and I've gotten other personalized training from people. And that's the basis of that too. So this isn't just a web design sales thing that you can do, or like a freelancer thing. If anyone's listening, like this is what top tier sales trainings are teaching people as well. And so I think obviously if it works for us, it works for them, and just, vice versa.
That's great to know. Cause as you probably know, I am not in the academic world. I have very mixed feelings and emotions about most higher ed education. Same. And I often think like, because I know what works for me because it actually worked, and I actually sold high-end websites and I actually built a 6-figure business. But there's still part of me that kind of feels like, am I just like, I feel like I'm almost a kid still. Like I'm not a real adult in the working world or corporate world, because I'm not in the corporate world. Well, I guess I am, but I'm not a suit and tie kind of go downtown kind of guy. So I've always felt odd, and I kind of wondered if it was different in corporate and in higher ed. But what's interesting is at this point, I'm hearing more and more people from that world like come to me and come to my colleagues type of strategies, because it's more personal, it's more real, it does translate. The same tactics that translate with selling a pizza shop website are often the same tactics that would sell a multi-million-dollar deal in the corporate world. So that's awesome to hear. I really appreciate hearing that, because it shows me that this stuff works in every situation and different budgets and different clients. So that's really cool. So you refined your services, raised your rates. What did you do to get more clients outside of that? Did you join like networking groups, or it's a little different during COVID? Did you join any like online forums for that kind of stuff? Did you join new groups like Facebook for speakers, or how did you start to expand your client base from there?
Yeah. So as a reminder, it's only been 3 months. But I don't, all of my clients have been from referral or from this speaking agency, or it's like a friend of a friend type of thing. But I spend a lot of my time, like I read books that are like how to be a professional speaker, how to up level. I read those blogs like specifically for speakers. And maybe one day I want to do that. But like right now, I'm just continually learning about what they want, what they need. But I was in Facebook, like the Facebook groups are how I got my start, and it's just referral from there.
That's great. Well, a really, really good, solid tactic with reading more about your target market, because I'm sure you'll be able to hit them with ideas and strategies, and they might be like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And the really cool thing about having similar niches, whatever, niches, if we want to create something.
Oh, I like that.
I like that. It was like kind of French sounding. The cool thing about that is you get to pull from other projects. It's like every time you do a project, you're going to build more muscle in that niche, like you're going to be jacked by the time you do 50 speaker websites, because you're going to know exactly what works, how to frame it. Obviously you're going to cater it to the person or to the company, but that's really, really cool to really take a deep dive into what they need, which is awesome. And I think this is a perfect example of focusing on one target market or a couple different industries, which is really, really cool. And yeah, you're in a great spot just a few months in with the referral chain, because you don't need to push or sell as much as just serve, which is really, really cool. How do you feel about it 3 months in? I was going to ask this later on, but like, are you still daunted in any way, or do you feel like sky's the limit? Are you more excited than ever? What? Yeah. What if you could sum up your feelings 3 months in?
All of that. I feel so excited because it's gone so well. And some days it's kind of like, depending on the day, but I'll have that like imposter syndrome of like, this shouldn't be going that well for you. But then some of me is like, I've been working towards this for so long. And like, it's crazy because while I haven't been designing websites for people for more than a year at this point, I have so many other skills that I use in my business that make me feel more confident about everything. So I am very much just like sky's the limit. And being in groups and, Facebook groups and stuff, I hear people's complaints about like why it's not going great for them. And part of me is like, I don't have that problem. And why don't I have that problem?
They're probably not calling people in their professional network
exactly
and coming with this approach. And I don't mean to sound like, condescending, because I know when you get started in business, if you have no mind for business at all, you have to learn that. What's interesting, and I think what's really cool about your situation, is you came from a professional background. So you probably didn't need to learn or hear me say, talk to somebody in your professional network. I imagine that was kind of natural for you to think about that, right? Which,
I mean, I was being told that for years. It's how I was successful in my past job, was I needed to reach out. And that's what everyone said. Like, you're working with a bunch of salespeople. They want to get on the call. They want to get on a phone call or a Zoom and talk to you. They don't, it's like this weird, and I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything or say that one's better than the other. One works for me better than the other. Is some people like to flex that they don't talk to their clients. And like they almost like, that's the goal, is to automate everything and onboard and all of that. And then all of a sudden they make a great website and they never really have to connect with somebody. But I find it's been so worth it to take that extra time and mental space to talk to people, and because you're making a personal connection and then they're referring you.
That is a great point.
I had a coach that I made her website, and she said that she chose me because I was the only one that was willing to get on multiple Zoom calls before she even paid me. And I was like, well, yeah, you're not just going to pay me. Why would you trust me? And she was like, well, that's what everyone expects, is to just trust, or to post, 6 things on Instagram. And all of a sudden they're going to have all these clients come in. And I knew that wasn't going to work for me. And so, like I said, I'm not saying it's all web designers, and I'm not trying to call anybody out. Whatever works for people does. But I almost felt like a fraud or that I was doing something wrong because I liked to do that. Like it's so shifted in my mind that I was like, web designers, they just sit at their computer. They don't talk to people. They don't want to. And all of my classmates in college were that kind of way. And then I would, walk into the classroom and say like, hi, everybody. And like, be like that person that everyone was like, oh no, like she's too loud for this room. But like now it's my strength. And so that
it is a strength, especially early on in the business. And I think what a lot of web designers don't realize is if you go out on your own and you wear all the hats, you are the salesperson. So whether you like it or not, you have to talk with people. Now, the cool thing about web design is for people who are extremely introverted and just cannot stand talking with people, there are still a lot of avenues. I mean, honestly, that type of personality type is best suited for just a job as a web designer or developer. However, if you still want to have more freedom, that's the beauty of white labeling, is you can become popular and in demand in these groups. And like, I have a couple people in my web design club who are like the go-to guys now for that kind of stuff. And they're more introverted, but they're really good at certain aspects. And that's how they're getting leads. So that can be done too. But yeah, I think if you are somebody who is the face of your business and whether you like it or not, you are the salesman, and you almost have to be the salesman or sales gal first before anything else, because you can be the best developer in the world, but if you can't sell your services, that's the problem. So it is interesting. I'm sure you felt kind of maybe out of place or odd, but I definitely want to encourage you and anyone else who is in that role, particularly if it's going really well, to not feel bad about that, because you have worked your ass off up to this point and you just translated everything. And again, going back to the idea of the mindset of like how to get clients, reaching out, focusing on your target market. It took me a long time to get to that point. And I've famously talked about how my first business card had drum lessons along with my MySpace page services and web design. Like, it did not even dawn on me that I should not have that type of service on my business card. But that just goes to show you can come a long way in a short amount of time, from a professional standpoint and knowing your clients and services. So I think that's all really valid in this case. And like I said, I see it all the time, and I feel for people who are stuck or are off to a slow start. But the reality is, if you just hide behind your computer and you don't get out there and you don't serve and you don't ask questions and you just try to sell in a sneaky or shady way, it's not going to work. So these things are crucial. And I think the most freeing part is, it's especially when it comes to how your approach of like serve over sell. You don't have to sell. You can just ask questions and try to help people. And that is how you get clients in 2021 and beyond. So,
right. And well, the thing is, like, going back to the niches and stuff, I work with people that also value communication. They're speakers. They're people that talk anyways. Think about the forklift guy that I did the website for. He didn't want to get on a call. It was like purely through email. And so like there is that kind of thing if you're thinking about your target market. I value communication. I hope the people I work with are going to answer my phone calls or whatever. I don't give my phone number out anymore, just because like I had one client that texted me and I was like, ooh, this is not good. Like, I was like, I don't answer my texts from my friends. I'm not going to answer my texts from my clients. Like, awesome. I'm so bad at it. But like, I learned that lesson really quick. But yeah, there's ways to utilize your strengths. And to go to the whole finding clients thing, if you think about, like, if we come out of the web design world, like if you think about, if you just sit in your house and your goal is to make friends, you're not going to reach your goal, because you're not doing anything to get towards like the making friends. Like, I moved to a new city by myself, didn't know a single person in the entire like state, and I had to make friends. So I had to put myself out there. I had to go to events and things to meet people. And that wasn't going to happen if I just sat at home. And so it's like, yes, sometimes we do have to do the uncomfortable things to get to where we want to go. But if I made it a game, honestly, like when I'm thinking about like meeting people and like trying to find clients, like it was like, if I do all this, like, point for me type of thing. Like I have to get through this, and I can put on a brave face and reach out to this person. And then once I'm done, I can put on sweatpants and just walk away.
Sure.
Like it was like a reward system, but it's just, that's like kind of my biggest, you can't make connections if you're not trying to make connections.
And I think another really, you mentioned uncomfortable. I think this is a really important point when it comes to this. And that is, just because something is uncomfortable for you now, it doesn't mean it's always going to be uncomfortable. It's just because you haven't done it. Like I talked with Bob McGilligan, who's the radio voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets. I have him on the podcast. I don't know if you heard that one. It was about so he is
I
awesome.
saw the Columbus Blue Jackets and I was like, I am listening to that immediately.
He was so great. But one point he said in there in that talk, which was episode 104, if anyone wants to go back and listen to it, one thing that's really applicable here is he was like, people feel like they're terrible on camera and they get real nervous to speak. And he's like, you're supposed to be bad. You don't do it that much. So if someone is not used to going to a networking group, it's okay to feel uncomfortable. You're going to be a little awkward. It's going to feel weird. You haven't done it that much. And I'm saying this because that's exactly how I felt. I put off going to a networking group because despite being a social person, I didn't feel comfortable in those settings. I hated speaking. I was terrible on camera when I started doing that stuff, and it was really uncomfortable. But over the years, I got better and better and better and more comfortable. And then I ended up being the president of the group. And then I ended up like attracting a ton of people to the group. And it became like my spot, my tribe. So all that to say, just because something's uncomfortable doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be uncomfortable. You will learn to adapt to it and get better at it. And that, I think that goes with sales too, for people who are terrified with talking with a potential client. Again, the short trick is just to serve and ask questions and don't try to sell yourself. And you will get used to it more. And I'm actually kind of curious, what are some of the areas in your business, Kristin, right now that maybe were uncomfortable at first, but that you're getting used to? Is it like anything technical, or is it anything, are you getting used to like not having a salary built out for the rest of the year? Like, what are some things that you're getting used to already, branching out of your comfort zone? Oh yeah.
It's just some of like the side business, like that business side that like I didn't have to worry about it back then. Like I was just making, a couple $100 on the side and people were Venmoing me and it was just like that. But now like it's all I got. So I have to do all these, I have to spend that time and do those things and learn it. Yeah. And I plan on hiring someone to do that for me because it's not something I'm going to be great at. So that's just
I would
what
do
it
that
is.
as soon as you can, for sure.
Yes.
That's one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah. I got
actually,
and stuff,
you'll save a lot more. Generally that costs evens out or actually ends up making you more because they know the tax laws and they know where the breaks are, and you end up saving hundreds, thousands of dollars.
And then you sleep better at night. Like, like anybody that started a business and they haven't done their taxes yet, it keeps us up. It's like, I don't want to do it. It's big and scary. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's just an appointment with someone.
Or it's like, I don't want to go to jail because I didn't understand this line on a tax form, But that's a great point. The taxes thing, that is a big thing because you might make, $7,000, $8,000 and it's like, whoa, I made $8,000 building websites. And it's like,
no, you didn't.
Actually, I didn't take home $8,000. I had to pay a couple thousand in taxes or whatever it is. And there's expenses. So that's a great point. That's a big mental like a mindset shift when it comes to, but I think that helps with your rates too, because it's like, okay, this is why I don't charge $500 for a website because there's a lot more to that than just the $500 for my time.
Exactly. So there's that like part of it, but I think on the technical side, it's going live is the most stressful thing. And I have to do it later today with a website. Is I don't know why, but like I get so scared that I'm going to mess up something, because I'm building, staging sites and then I got to go live. And I'm still getting to the point where that's more of a system and just a process I got to go through. But that's been the one thing that I'm just like, oh, I don't know how to do this. And that's why I'm asking questions to people that know better than me.
Gotcha. Now, when you go live, let's get technical for a second. Are you using a duplicator tool or through hosting, or what do you typically go live with?
We're still working that out. So currently I use SiteGround for hosting and I have all of my websites on there. So I do have that, like next year I'll have some recurring income and all of that. But so I do SiteGround and then I have them in like on just like a temporary domain. And so, to get to a website, it's like, Kristin P 72 at, all of that. And so like I'll send that to a client once I'm done with it so they can give me the feedback. But then it's once I have that and it's all great, then how am I getting it to, that person's name.com? Like I have to search and replace all of the string. I didn't do something in WordPress the other day and that messed me up.
Have you seen my tutorial on manually migrating a WordPress website? That will be I'm going to be your new best friend after you watch that tutorial. Now I'm going to be your really new best friend. So, I see you typing. Hopefully you pull that up. Check that out. It's less than 20 minutes. It literally will show you how to migrate a website because there's really we'll get technical for a second. Why not? It's a web design podcast.
People are going to appreciate it. I promise.
Yeah.
As a listener.
So that tutorial literally walks you through how to move a site from a complete domain to another one. So in the case of this, it'll be perfect because you might go to a different hosting or different domain. If you just go from a subdomain to a live domain, it's a little easier because you literally can just move the files and just rename the file paths and stuff. But yeah, there's kind of a few components to a website. There is, just for simplicity's sake, there is the actual files in WordPress, which is like your WP content and all that stuff. And then there's the database, which is found inside PHPMyAdmin. The database is what actually houses the pages. So when I got into WordPress, I broke a couple of my first sites moving them because I was like, I moved the files. What happened? I did not understand that the actual pages and the content in the pages were in the database. So those are really the two main things that need to be moved. And then essentially, just for your reference, in case you didn't know, Kristin, in WordPress files, there's actually only 2 files that matter. Everything else is just standard WordPress. The WP content folder is where all of your images, themes, plugins, and everything is. So that's custom. And then your what's called the WP config file literally is just that. It says we're going to configure these files to match up with that database. Those are the only things that matter. All of the other WordPress files you see are just standard WordPress. So essentially what I'll show you in that tutorial, hopefully you can watch that after this call. That'll basically show you how you can literally just move the WP content folder and then the config file, and then just make sure the config file is matching up with the database in the new place. And then all the other files can just be a standard WordPress install. And that will that'll save you from the database error and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, hopefully that helps out. I mean, there's a lot of great cloning tools out there, and usually they work. However, when they inevitably break or time out, you've got to know how to do it manually or have somebody to help out. So hopefully that'll help. I use
Manage WP, and I make a backup of all of my, my temporary websites before anything happens, because I'm like, you never know. But I guess the biggest problem I've really had is when people want to keep their emails, how they're already doing it. So when I'm moving a website from Wix to WordPress, they want to keep their Gmail access that they have through Wix. And right now I'm working with one that's with Yahoo Small Business, and she wants to keep that. So she doesn't want to change up her whole system of how she checks her email. She just wants a new website. Yeah. And to her, those things aren't connected.
Okay. Good news for you.
Yes, they are.
So the next course you need to go through is my cPanel course, because that will walk you through that as well. It's a super low cost course for everyone who's interested, because that covers email, files, database, all the scary stuff. And it's a super short course. In short, and we'll go into more of this in the course visually and stuff, but what controls email is the MX record. So the really cool thing about that is you can take a site domain and everything from WordPress, Wix, whatever, and move it to a different host. And then as long as the MX record is the same, the mail will not change. So you won't break any mail. And then there's also one thing that really is important is to know the difference between name servers and just like an A record, which is what tells the website where the actual URL is. Name servers control everything. So if you change name servers from Bluehost to SiteGround, you're changing everything. Domains, email, all that. Everything has to be perfectly mirrored on the new host. If you just wanted to change a website but wanted to keep all the mail the same, all you'd have to do is change the A record, which just controls the URL. So there's a couple really important things like that to make you feel more comfortable with domain switches and hosting and stuff. I know that's the worst part of all that, but yeah, I mean, honestly, what we just covered right there, and then just knowing the files, the fact that there's 3 important things: database that has all the pages, there's the folder, the content folder, and then there's the config file that connects everything. That's it. That's as That's all you need for every migration. So
yeah, I was actually saving that question until after this call was done, because I was like, by the way, can you help me? And like, it's great that you said that, because now I know there's other people that struggle with this, because when I ask any question like this in a Facebook group, there's at least, 4 people that say same, following, like, yeah, me neither, stuff like that.
And I understand, like, this was the worst part for me. I broke so many websites. I took clients' emails down. It was terrible. This is literally why I created my cPanel course, because I do not want people to go through what I did, which was like one Saturday morning we went live, or no, it was Friday night we went live with a site. Saturday morning I wake up to my client had like 3 voicemails. He was freaking out because his email went down. And I was like, oh no, I didn't know the MX record was implicated with that. So those are really the most important things. And the tricky thing I think about requesting help for that in the groups is, not all the time, but often the people who are really smart are the worst at explaining or often helping sometimes. So they'll be like, well, Kristin, your A record, blah, 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 and then MX record. And you're like, what I don't even speak the language that you're saying right now.
Right.
So,
where are you even seeing these things? And I know now, but that was my questions in the beginning, is people were very bad at explaining some of these
So let's do a case study. If, whenever the time is right, cPanel course will rock your world. And then the migration tutorial, and anyone can search it, manually migrate WordPress. We'll link it in the show notes.
Perfect.
Those 2 things will literally make you so much more confident. And here's a new fun fact. You can charge more, because now you can do this a lot faster, and you can grow your business because you won't break a site. You can do it real quick and be done. And then your client will be like, wow, that was awesome. And then they'll be like, my other web designer broke my email. And you're like, well, yeah, that's because, he didn't know about the
I
MX
know what
record.
they did.
So, yeah, right. So anywho, all good stuff. This is a nice little case study for helping you with a aspect of the business that is new and that you don't care for or feel confident with, but hopefully you get some more confidence. And it's an honor for me, Kristin, to help you out with that. And then I do want to hear about recurring income real quick as we wrap this conversation up. Mm-hmm. When did the idea of hosting and maintenance come into play for you? Because I'm sure you probably heard me talk about the beauty of any sort of recurring income with web design. Did that help? What was the thing that spurred you on to think about recurring income and then coming into my maintenance plan course?
Yeah, I would say in large part was you always kind of saying it throughout the podcast. But I think every web designer that has recurring income is like, you need recurring income. And I knew this like just kind of as a business sense, is you don't want to have to work so hard for every single dollar that you make. I knew that going into this. So I was like, how do I make this happen? Do I have to sell products? Do I have to make a course right now? And it's like, no, you can just keep serving the people that you've already sold to, which, what is it? People are like 7 times more likely to buy from you a second time than they are a first time. I don't know the actual statistic, but I wanted, and I loved the people I was working with. And so I was like, how do I just keep working with them? They're all so great and wonderful and nice. So now I have just like, monthly, I do hosting, and then I'll do some maintenance. And so I offer an hour of edits to their website, which no one has gone over 15 minutes of it. So like, that's great. And then I like to just, surprise and delight them too. So if I do make extra Canva templates, like if I'm really in the zone and it doesn't work for a client, I'll like package them up and send them over to other people and be like, I know you use Canva, you might like these. And so I just like to keep over delivering, over serving, because it's just gotten me this far. So, and
I'm trying to remember in the video you sent me back, did you mention that you had used Managed WP, or you had, but the course kind of showed you kind of how I use it, which kind of opened your mind to like, oh, wow, there's a lot of different things we can do with this, right?
Yeah, I would say that I was like 85 to 90% there with Managed WP. And so a lot of your course, when it came down to that part, I was like, oh, I'm doing this right. Like I got this, and then there was like some things that I was like, oh, I did have a question about that, or I've just been completely ignoring this and everything. And I love Managed WP. It's saved me from many of things. And I think my clients like the monthly report and everything. And I like that I can say, hey, if your website goes down, I'll just back up yesterday's website. Like, I love being able to say that to them. But then also for me, is like, if I do something or if they do something, I'm good. I'm not going to cry about it and have an extra rebuild a whole website type of thing.
And the beauty about Managed WP is it's super, super cheap. Like, it's crazy affordable. And this is really important when it comes to going full time and starting your business, because you have got to automate this stuff so you don't do it manually. I had a student recently who didn't know about Managed WP. They're new to the game, and they were manually updating every website going in, and it was a good like 8 to 10 hours a month with all the clients he's getting now. And I was like, all right, you ready for your world to be rocked? And I was like, and it's not going to cost much at all. Managed WP. And then literally like 2 days later, he hit me up and he was like, dude, why haven't I been using this? And I was like, well, it's because you didn't go through my maintenance plan course, but that's all right. I'm still here for you.
Right.
Use Managed WP. So anyone can use that or any other tools that automate that stuff. It's such a time saver, and it's really important to keep you profitable, keep you top of mind with clients. So I'm really, really excited about that end of your business. I'm really excited to see what happens moving forward here. So before I have one final question, before we get to that, what do you envision for the next, the rest of 2021 into 22? Do you think you're going to continue just to refine everything you have in place? Do you anticipate adding more services like email marketing or anything like that? What do you envision for your business as you look at it over the next few months and beyond?
I'm not really sure. I don't think I want to do email marketing, but I do want to help do more of like strategically planning lead magnets or how to implement, podcasts and stuff on behalf of all these speakers that I'm helping. Yeah. I want to get more into more passive income streams and try to maybe sell some of the different things that I've already established in my business and be like, hey, if this can help anybody, like, here it is, like my questions for my intake that really starts getting us on a personal level and everything, but also talks about their website. Like I've really refined that. And, like different things like that, or like a content guide, the content guide that I've created for the speakers. At this point, it's like 17 pages on a Google Doc, but it goes through like what SEO is and why it's important. And hey, if you were going to, look for this, or if you wanted to be found on Google, what would you want it to be found for? And it's like kind of walking through easily and in like simple terms, how to do it, like what you want in a website. And so that would be maybe something that I want to try to do. But I mean, my goal is to have a 6-figure year next year. So my first full year in business. And I totally foresee that happening.
Well, tomorrow I am recording a free masterclass on how to get your business to 6 figures. So I'll have that out by the time this episode comes out. So maybe I'll link that, and awesome. I'll send it to you personally if you want to check that out, because that'll hopefully give you some really good tactics and strategies to help you put everything in place to get there, because you're definitely on the right path, Chris, and I'm super, super excited for you. I think there's actually a huge opportunity for you, maybe phase 2 of the business, to have some of your passive income kind of stuff with either templates or, sharing everything that you're doing in your business, particularly since it is a niche or a niche, since we've come up with that term, a niche. I feel like because your target market so well, and a lot of people are doing websites for coaches and consultants and speakers, there's probably quite a market for that. So why not share what you know and make some passive income off it? And I would think, whether you want to sell these or do this internally, since you are working with a lot of the same type of clients, you could probably make a lot of template style sites and then have maybe a lower cost website build portion, and then grow your hosting and maintenance and sell those templates to clients, customize them for a certain amount of hours. A speaker that maybe is a lower budget, or maybe not super well known yet, may want to go for that option. And then you could just use one of your 9 templates or whatever, and then swap out the colors, text,
I did actually have that idea, and I did want to do that. And then I've just gotten like, I don't want to say lucky, but like I've just positioned myself that I've been very busy, and like I'm booked out right now. Like I'm not even looking for anybody for the next month. But that is definitely something that's on my radar that I want to kind of just start exploring, because I do want to be able to help those people that maybe are doing that on the side, like maybe, and I know what beginning speakers kind of make, and they're struggling to get by and all of that. And so I would love to have that.
The other thing about that too is, honestly, just from a time perspective and internally, there's no reason for you to recreate the same kind of website over and over. Like you might as well make a few templates, and I'm telling you, and it may feel like you're ripping clients off if you just use a template that you already created, but I learned that if you just change colors out and a few images and graphics and change the text and fonts, it looks very different. Yeah. So, and clients don't care if they're like, unless it's an exact clone copy, most clients aren't even going to know or care. So, they're likely not going to have the same audience as this other person. So,
and that's
I would definitely think about that.
Yeah. Every website looks different because the people and the images in it are different and all of that. And so I have a basic wireframe that I pretty much follow throughout all of my websites. But like, if they have really good professional photos, I'm going to be able to really make that website great. But say they don't, we have to use stock photos or like smaller file sizes. Like, I have to just, tweak it and move it around and all of that. And so, that's definitely part of my process that I'm starting to develop now.
Yeah. Well, that would be my coaching tip for you is through the next few months here, like be intentional about the layouts you're creating. And what I would do is really keep an eye on like the different types of coaching clients and speaking clients, because you may have speakers who just speak and then they need events and that kind of thing. And you may have some that have books, and then you may have some that have courses, and you could probably have a few different templates. Like, okay, when a lead comes in, they're a speaker who has a book and this and this. Okay, I've got a template that I've already put the groundwork into. Now we can refine it with their images and have some custom stuff on the front page, and it would save a ton of time, which is going to be key in getting you to that 6-figure mark. So, hopefully, didn't mean to get all coachy on you, but hopefully that
I appreciate it all. I feel lucky to be able to get coached. So
yeah. Well, I'm excited for you, Chris. And, you're a go-getter and an awesome, savvy mind with this kind of stuff. It's not surprising that you're having a great first few months. Before my last question, where would you like everyone to go to check you out for some inspiration or to connect with you?
Absolutely. So my website is KristinPearson.com. Kristin's Kristin. Everyone spells that incorrectly, so that's a good start. On Instagram, I am Kristin Pearson Designs. And then my preferred platform is actually TikTok. And I'm just design business. In one word, design business. And I love to connect with other designers there. I don't really have, products or anything that I'm trying to sell or whatever to other designers. So the people that are listening to this. So truly just reach out, trying to build connections, build the network. And I would say if anybody is interested in getting my form of questions that I ask people on a discovery call, just reach out to me. I'm willing to share some things and maybe even get some feedback on it before, I do start selling it. So if anyone's interested in that or just connecting, I'm here for it.
Are you open to maybe linking that? We could link that in the show notes. Would you be open to putting that on your website and we could just create a link for everyone listening to go check it out?
Yeah.
Because we could do KristinPearson.com/Josh Hall, and you could just put it on there if you'd be open to doing that, or.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might make it a little easier. That way people could just go there instead of, pinging you left and right, although I know you're open to that.
Trying to spell names correctly. Yeah. It's tough.
If you're open to that, we could put it in the show notes, and that way they could just, we could send folks there, KristinPearson.com, and we'll of course link it in the show notes /Josh Hall. And I want to check that out. I'm really, really curious. So I would love to check that out.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, Kristin, last question for you. I know we've gone quite a while. That was a very quick hour and a half.
It was. Wow.
Very quick hour and a half. If you were, since you're so new to the journey still in full time, if someone was like you in January this year and they're like, I might want to consider going full time, what would be one piece of advice that you would pull from your experience so far? Is there I know that you could probably say 1,000 things, but is there something that jumps to mind as far as what you would maybe mentor somebody on?
I think people just get too nervous to start sometimes because they see everything that they have to do to start a business. And maybe you make a list of everything you think you need to do before you're okay with going live or whatever, and prioritize it, and then just do one at a time. Hide that list, get your top 3 of the day or whatever it is. Just don't be afraid to start. And also, obviously, I'm a big proponent, use your network. You are not going to be able to go full time if you have, no portfolio or anything like that. And also it will save you so much in the long run of learning where your faults are and what really, messes you up in the process. I had to learn so much about everything of this. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if I was just making, fake brochure sites to put on my portfolio, which is great to get those people in the door, but you have to start talking to people and telling people your plans. I think a big thing is everyone loves to seem like they're an overnight success, but they're not, telling people about what they're doing in the behind the scenes, but that's not going to get us anywhere. You never know if your great uncle has a friend who's doing something that you're super interested in that you could make a website for. You never know. So just utilize your network is the biggest thing, and just one step at a time.
Very well said. Very well said. I love that. Kristin, thank you for your time today, for coming on. I've really, really had a blast chatting with you and getting to know you better in your business. I think really awesome things are ahead. I definitely don't think this will be the last time you're on the show, because maybe we can do a follow-up next year to see where things are at and what you've learned, maybe 6 months, year down the road. So super pumped for you. It's been awesome, seeing your journey so far. I know we're more recently connected now that you've gone through my maintenance plan course and stuff, but I'm really excited to, continue being your coach and hopefully, guide you every step of the way moving forward. So
yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristin.
Hey guys and gals, just wanted to pop in with a couple things before you head out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. I would love to hear your feedback, and it will also help other web designers find the show. Be sure to check out the show notes for this episode. Just go to joshhall.co, click on podcasts, and search this episode number, and you'll find all the links, descriptions, and resources we talked about. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode is live. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.